Franklin once said. Okay, we ready?
Everybody here speaking?
Okay, Nicole, are you recording?
Yeah, I'm ready. You want me to do roll?
No, I'll do roll. Well, no, you can do roll.
All right. Bernard Green,
More. I'm here.
Dick Benka, Ruth Ellen Fitch, Jeff Rudolph,
Hey, Charlie.
Sergio Modigliani,
Present.
Janet Gelbart,
Here.
It's okay. Okay.
Sadaf Kazmi,
Here.
Mariah Nebrega, John Doggett,
Here.
John Vinskoyak, Jesse Hefter,
Here.
Cliff Brown.
Cliff's name is here. You
Cliff
might have.
is here.
Here, did you hear me?
Oh, now we can.
Okay, let's get started. First of all, let's approve the minutes for December 18, 2025. And Sergio, you have your hand up?
I do. I'll make the motion to start us off, but I do have some proposed language items to correct.
Okay,
Under item 3, there's a report from me concerning futures, and it states most of the items on the initial list were not viable. That it meant it's supposed to be not viable under the original schedule. These were all schedule related. So I would request that we add that. And then it goes on to say, we'll look at in greater depth. We're looking at all of them in greater depth, given the time extension. So that was that correction. On number 5, this is the discussion about town-wide elected officials. And I had a question there because the word appointed appears in the text, and I'm not sure what is the distinction about appointed mean. Who's appointed? Are we talking about the advisory committee?
yes,
Well,
that'd be the only one, only group on our committee that has appointed members.
Well, all of us are appointed. The members of the committee are appointed.
Yeah. But I don't think the intention was to exclude them from voting on the recommendation.
yeah, that's my point. I think the key for me was town-wide elected officials, which as far as my understanding was, we only meant, really we're referring to the select board and the school committee. So that's just a clarification. And then under item 6, which is the discussion of the flash vote that was conducted by the students, the paragraph there, and I went back and I listened to the tape, we made statements that survey was issued without the knowledge or input of this committee. And that's not in the minutes. And I believe it should be. It should reflect that statement. So those are the items that I wanted to propose as amendments to the minutes.
Okay, does anyone object to those amendments? Okay, Charlie, you have that down, or did Nicole? Nicole, do you have
I
them
have
down?
it, yes.
Okay. So, I'd like
With that in mind, I'll move the minutes. Do I get a second as amended?
Second.
okay, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Nicole, can you do the roll?
Bernard,
Aye.
Dick, Ruth Ellen, Jeff Rudolph, Sergio,
Aye.
Janet,
Yes.
Sadaf,
Aye.
Mariah, John Doggett,
Aye.
John Van Scoyac,
Aye.
Jesse Hefter,
Aye.
Cliff Brown.
Aye.
Okay, next item, review draft full committee report outline. And the drafter, I guess that's Sadat.
Yeah.
Is that for
Sure.
feedback? Particularly whether the structure makes sense and if they're missing any components of the report. Do you want to introduce it any further, Sadat?
Sure. So this outline includes sections that are common to the entire report. It includes deeper, more detail on both the school side and the future side, and a little bit of information on the town side, which Jesse is going to add as a follow-up as well. So some of this is in process, but should be completed soon. And as Chair Green said, the goal is to solicit feedback, make sure that the structure makes sense, see if there are any missing sections. So that's objective number one. So we can go through that. And at the end of this document, there's a timeline as well. So we can talk about that afterwards. But let's go through the outline first.
Did someone put it on screen?
We have it for the screen. Yeah.
Sorry, just take a second.
I can do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's start. Why don't we go by section, executive summary being the first section.
Melissa, you can collapse it with the icon on the top, above that on the left, right above that.
Thank
There.
you.
Okay, any is this the best way to do this, Sadat?
Yeah, so we can, I'm happy to go section by section. So that's fine. And then, and Bernard, if you want me to facilitate, I'm happy to do that as well. It's up to you.
Sure, I think it's probably best for you to facilitate since you wrote this and.
Yeah.
I have a question. Is this supposed to show, because Sergio's is all filled in.
Yep.
Full extent of things that they're looking at, because I think we should at least have, and I don't know if that's down there, some sort of comment on the town school partnership. We talked about it. I know Chaz says we need to leave it to them, but I think we need something in the report that says these are the items that were covered, and we're encouraging, recommending whatever that the town school partnership review. So if it's covered somewhere else, that's fine. I don't know if Future had it in there. If they were supposed to do it, if it's supposed to be somewhere else, because that was a very short-lived subcommittee. And then I don't even know if everybody saw the results.
Yep. So right now in the section other recommendations, this was actually intended to.
Okay, so that's further down the page.
Sadat, we've lost you. You're muted.
Sorry about that. I accidentally muted myself. So Janet, if you see Roman numeral.
Yeah, no, now it's
Sorry.
coming up. That was part of it, as it was cut off. And when I opened it this morning to look at, it was just so dense. I said, let me wait to hear you walk through it.
Yeah, it's right there. It says other recommendations.
Okay, great.
And I think we can flesh this out further, but these were the things that were relevant. I think that in the context of some of those conversations that we had with that subcommittee, these were kind of the big pieces. So I think we can add that. We can call this section something else. It didn't fit cleanly into the other
Exactly.
buckets.
And just as long as it's somewhere in the report, that was my whole point.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, a couple of raised hands. Sergio, was your hand raised?
I guess, yes, it was. I just wanted to observe that I happen to have been able to go in and put in the expected votes under future, and I don't think the town and the schools either have done that or they've done it in a different way.
That's right. So
Well,
we
it's
can,
just-
we
Yeah,
can
that-
add
that's
those
all
in the
myself.
town- on the school side, but the details of the work that the school subcommittee has done is in a later section. You guys will see that in a second. I think Cliff had his hand raised next and then Jesse.
Yeah, so I just wanted to comment on the town school partnership thing. That was a discussion about the formula, as I recall it. That subcommittee never really finished its work, didn't take any votes. And I'm not sure what it is that we're expecting to say, since we actually never finished. So there's really nothing for us to recommend or comment, because we never took a vote to recommend that the town school partnership do anything. So Jan, I don't know what it is that you're suggesting.
Basically, that we discussed it, that there was no deep dive, but that Chaz sent us this big memorandum. It never came back to the full committee somewhere, and this has been the hard part of working in separate groups. Somewhere in the report, something that says it was discussed, these are the items that were discussed, and we think it needs to be further investigated by the town school partnership.
Then you need to take a vote on all that. That's the point.
Wouldn't it
We
be part of the-
we have never really gone into any depth. with
Exactly,
respect to-
and that's my question. Are there things that we started to talk about that never came to fruition that would somehow be put in somewhere so that when we vote on the whole package, we're taking a vote at that time? Or does one of these subcommittees, I'm happy to write something up. I don't know where to stick it. It didn't seem to belong to the town. That's why I'm raising it here. There are a lot of issues that seem to apply to all of us together rather than one of the subsets. But if it doesn't belong at all, that's perfectly fine. I'm just raising the thought.
So I think that to the extent that there is a vote and a recommendation that is brought to this committee, it would go here in an executive summary, and then, if there's need for additional detail, we can find more space here. But I agree with Cliff. We didn't land on a conclusion in the context of this committee or via the subcommittee that was assembled in the spring or the summer, whenever that was. So what would need to happen is that there would need to be a recommendation that is proposed that then this committee would need to vote on for it
And
to.
I'm willing to write that, but I don't think it's something for a subcommittee. I'm willing to write it if you tell me where and how to bring it to the whole, or you can all say no and it goes away. I'm just looking for guidance.
Yep, I understand. I'm not sure. I don't think I, for one, I'm not close enough to where the thinking has evolved on this since it got moved out of this group to have a proposal as to how to manage it. Perhaps other people do.
What, you said it got moved out of that group. Which group did it move to?
It didn't.
I
Okay.
thought it was taken up by the town school partnership is what I had understood.
Well, Chaz
Well,
said thinks that has to vote on it, but then it's not considered in the report. And my question is, does it belong as a recommendation? Because we're supposed to say, we want to do this on an override. These are our recommendations for improving town, school, whatever. And that would be a recommendation for improving process. I am happy to go back to where we left it with Chaz, because we never finished it, and write something up. But I think it's something the full committee rather than a section needs to look at. I just don't know how to move it forward, or if everyone decides we don't want to do anything.
We could, couldn't Bernard docket it for discussion, Jenna?
So, Sergio, sorry to interrupt. Here's the problem I have with this discussion. That subcommittee never talked about details. We never did back testing. We never did the work that the subcommittee suggested be done. I don't understand how we can make any sort of a informed recommendation on anything with respect to that topic. It just sort of died. And if there's going to be a recommendation, it needs to go back to that subcommittee first. I personally, I don't see that happening. I think we've got plenty of other things to spend our time on. The town school partnership hasn't discussed this yet. So I just let it go.
I think that's fair. Do other people have feedback or concerns with that? I'm happy to remove this.
My concern is that if it's an integral part of how the budget gets set in terms of the budgets for the town and the budgets for the school, how is it that we're gonna finish this report, in 2 weeks without mentioning it?
I mean,
It's not,
I think what you
I
would
mean-
do is you would use the existing model, Jesse, and then perhaps pursue this as a follow-up with a smaller group to tackle later. I think the question of the timeline.
To chime in, the room has lost its internet connection, so we are trying to rejoin. I'm on my laptop here. So Bernard and Janet, Charlie and I will rejoin you momentarily.
I think you guys may be back now. So I may be going from memory, but I see that I thought Dick Banka had joined the call.
Carla has, well.
No,
Carla
Carla's-
Davis here.
No,
Carla's
I
Davis
see
is-
Dick, yeah, and I recall that that Dick was one of the people who had been looking at this question of the healthcare split. And so I thought maybe you might have some observations, Dick, as to what your view would be about, is there a way of having a discussion and including something about this or not?
My view is that it's, when we're talking about the 8317 is, I assume what you're,
Nope, that's not what we're talking about.
okay, then I apologize. I came in late, I was
Yeah.
delayed.
Well, Cliff, you're going to have to help me then, because
So-
that's what I
so-
thought Janet was referring to.
So the town, that group was looking at the presentation of how revenue gets divided and whether or not certain fixed costs that currently are above the line would go below the line. Not talking about the actual split between the town and its employees with respect to premiums. It's a very different conversation.
That is a different issue.
Okay.
But that's, we were talking about the sub.
Hand up, I'd like to speak.
And the issue, let me just say, the issue of above the line, below the line, the assignment of cost to one entity or the other, or as a overall cost is something that I have certainly not focused on.
Okay, Chaz?
Yeah, so yeah, I think Janet's question is well taken, and the question, the framework of it, just to refresh people's memory, right? The recommendation that was made after going through that analysis was to move costs below the line, particularly the cost of health benefits.
That group never made a recommendation. That group never took a vote, and that group never got the testing that it asked for.
Certain functions that could be, it could be shared, consolidated, or otherwise run more efficiently. And ask the town school partnership to take those processes on. It is something that I've continued to, discuss and advocate for. I do think there is value in the same way that there was value in the BFAC report of having a recommendation on this, because it's something external that we can point to and say, the pressure here is not just in the abstract, we should do this. It's there's a recommendation here from the Expenditures Revenue Study Committee, especially if this committee decides to stay a standing committee in some form and follow up on its recommendations. I think it's valuable if the committee agrees with that recommendation, to have that recommendation in the report in some form.
There was a
But,
third,
but
there-
Chaz,
Yeah.
let me, the subcommittee never voted on any recommendation. And the subcommittee never received the analyses that the subcommittee had asked for. So if you want this recommendation to come from the full committee, you've got to first go back to the subcommittee, give the subcommittee the fulfill the request it made, and let them take a vote and bring it to this committee. But there's been no recommendation made by anyone.
Okay. I think if that's the procedure we want to follow, then that's what we'll do. Mindful of the time here.
And that's why I said, we should probably not focus on it.
Yeah.
so my question is then procedurally, it can't be brought just to the full committee. That I'm willing to work with Chaz to put things together and skip the subcommittee process, but write something that the full committee can vote on without going through a subcommittee, if that's not
Okay,
possible.
Sure, well, sure, but get the information, the analysis that the subcommittee requested back in August.
I think the
Okay.
primary missing information was a multi-year view, looking back to see what that would have looked like from a budget perspective. That was question number one. I think the second question outstanding was operationally, what that would mean to actually operationalize this from a both town and school administration perspective, just so everybody understands what they're getting into. Those were the two questions that I recall without going back to.
Part of the recommendation, because I don't know that there's time to do that, but it could be part of the recommendation could be, these are issues that we looked at and we recommend that the town proceed with the analysis and present it to the town school partnership for a vote.
Can I just chime in here for a minute too? I did start recasting based on the recommendations, but I think part of the issue is that we were still looking for the schools to be able to participate, and they had a capacity problem at the time. So we moved on to other things. I can pick it back up and meet with Janet and go through it with her. Happy to do that.
I think, Janet, the way that you framed up the recommendation, my concern would be that if the recommendation is just that everybody look at these open questions, I question how valuable that's going to be. I think the alternative is, well, I see a few options. One is that we do the work within the timeline, get it out within the report timeline for this committee. And then the second option is that we do it as a follow-up, right? We wrap up the report and then it's sort of a, I don't know, we call it whatever we want, but a follow-up to this committee's work, just given the capacity constraints that Melissa mentioned, that's another option. I know Chaz, I think what you were saying, you guys cut out a little bit in the room, was that it didn't seem ideal and that it would be good to have it as part of the recommendation. And my concern is just whether that's viable or not, which is, I think, where Cliff started.
And I would just point out that there were three things in my mind. One was where the benefits get split above or below. The other is the recurring issue of the school committee having control over some of the building issues that get raised. And I think because I scanned very quickly the school report, that might have been taken up there. And then the third that Melissa had raised is that there are revenues that are specific to programs that should not be part of the split, and they're doing it now sort of as they come up instead of having this is the way we're going to do it. On the town side, it was, I forget which fees. On the school side, which I never even knew till listening to some of the school committee, they get Medicaid money that gets pushed into the hole, but that's directly related to the schools and should be there. So that's why I think it's important that it get followed up on. If it can't happen, I'm not looking for extra work at this point either, but if there's some way that we could bring it forward, I think it's important.
So I go ahead, Jesse, you had to hear about.
Yeah, so I wanted to return back to the discussion we were having about the outline and maybe park town schools split for a few minutes here because we're going to run out of time, if that's okay with everyone.
Good idea.
One of the questions, you know, we can have a sub meeting about it. Thanks, Melissa, for putting it back up. So one of the questions I have about this is that the recommendation summary B, including the override, the way that our subcommittee has written the report that we're going to review tomorrow morning at our regularly scheduled 9 a.m. meeting is from the town perspective, because that's where our focus has been. We've not been asking the schools how much money they need, where they're going to get it from, recommendations, nothing, because Sadaf's team is working on that. And so, you know, in our summary, we've recommended what the, you know, size of the override needs to be, and we've given the reasons why and how we got here. So I'm a little confused about, you know, section 1, section 2 here, where the town sort of provides, as we have now, we'll fix it up, but still it's in a final draft form, the override recommendation, including, and then recommendations as compared to, and then, you know, then the next section, like sort of having the school side, well, this is what the school thinks the override needs to be. I mean, it sort of needs to be a combination. I don't think that, you know, in any view that I have of what the menu might look like on the ballot in May, there's going to be vote 100% the override for the town or vote 100% the override for the school, and you can vote on one and not the other. I mean, that's theoretically possible. I don't think it's practical or people are going to want to do that. And you know, if it's less than the total that the town plus the schools are asking for, meaning that the town, the Brookline is asking for, people are going to have to need, you know, people may need a way of determining, well, I'm comfortable spending this much, but not the total amount. And then we'll have to decide how that gets allocated back down through the two components or sides. I don't know, sides sound confrontational, just the two elements of what makes up Brookline. So
Jesse, if we moved the override recommendation to A, 1A, as part of the executive summary, does that address your concern?
Yeah, yes, I would do that. I assume that A will have, you know, that, you know, right now, if the school committee doesn't find a way to reduce the 6.4 or so million, and the town already knows it's 5.3, so that, you know, 9.5 million or something like that, that would be an A right now, right? That's our total override request. And then, and the summary, the executive summary would have a combination, I'm assuming, of rationales from our full committee about, you know, combined from schools and town about how we, you know, why this has to be the case. The details will be below as to all the, you know, all the impacts and FTEs and enrollment and everything. But the I would be more comfortable. Otherwise, I think it sets up a you know, here's like, why aren't the two parts talking to each other?
Yep, that's fair.
And I'm happy to, you know, as I mentioned to you earlier today, I'm happy to put in a couple of sections in our recommendation summary under town. But, you know, the way I read Sergio's is, again, not critical, just feedback, is that these are projects that he's talking about for the future, whereas the town and the schools ones, they're specific sort of items that we're studying that are, you know, really pertain to the override in its current proposed implementation. So, you know, I'm not too concerned about like putting a lot of details under B1 and B2.
Okay, Cliff. Thanks, Jesse. I'm going to move the override recommendation to A, and then
Yeah, thanks.
yeah, address it. Okay, Cliff, go ahead. You're on mute.
Two things. There are plenty of things that people started or think need to be done that are not going to get done. So I think to the extent that we're going to bring up anything for additional work going forward, we should compile a list of all those items that, because of timing, because of lack of information, for whatever reasons, we were not able to get to, and, you know, craft a recommendation that, you know, if people want to, that encompasses all of that. And the town school partnership, the above line, below the line, could be one of those components. Second,
That's
Jesse,
that's a great idea.
That works.
I appreciate what you said, and it actually, I never had thought that at the end of the day that there were going to be separate override recommendations coming from each individual group. I assumed that at some point, the entire group would be looking at the request, which I wanted to understand whether or not what you mentioned for the town and the schools, that seems like the first year request, or is that a 3-year request? Because aren't we looking at 3 years?
The town
that's-
one that I mentioned, Cliff, is a 3-year.
Okay, so but the school one, the 6.5 is a one.
Is
the
a
first
one,
year.
is a one, again, that's a 1 year,
Okay,
you
I
know,
get it, I get it. So,
yeah, the
And-
other,
and-
the real number there would be like close to 15 or something, maybe more.
yeah, so to be clear, we have not, we being the schools subcommittee, have not seen anything addressing or commenting or asking for any sort of an override. We've just gotten, as you know, the most recent forecast, which you just got yourselves.
That's right.
So what I would have thought the group was going to do was to take a look at how much money in total is being asked over 3 years and put that in the hopper of capacity to pay in terms of a recommendation to the select board, which is going to be a number. And, I'm not sure how much detail we're going to be digging into in terms of, oh, geez, if you're not going to give everyone what they ask, how it should be reduced. I'm not sure that's in our purview, but it's a question to ask, I guess, Chaz and Bernard.
I'll speak. Just my understanding of this process was that the committee make a recommendation to the select board that they feel confident. And if that involves trade-offs, the trade-offs, I think, can be discussed, if the ask is X and the committee believes that it's X minus something, that's fine. I think that's appropriate for the under the scope. And then I think the question becomes, right, what are those other things? And I will say, to help the committee's conversation about this, the budget book is coming out in 2 weeks' time. We have a no override scenario, right? We have, by necessity, we are prepping a budget that covers the gap that we are experiencing with cuts. And so we can take a look at those cuts and go through them with the committee and discuss, is this, are these the cuts that we want to be making, even in a yes scenario? With that said, I think, the work of, my hope is that in the work of this, that we can sort of prove out that wherever possible, we are identifying other revenue opportunities, other cut opportunities, and really limiting on the town side this ask for going to the voters to to this reasonable level, and finding the money we need wherever else we can. But that's the goal that I see here, is that this committee takes a look at that and says, yes, that's true, or in certain circumstances, you need to do more, in which case that's the recommendation we'll take.
But to just
That's the town side.
clear, I mean, the override, no override scenario is sort of the binary scenario that the voters ultimately might be faced with. But for
Yeah.
this committee, it's really not the binary one. It's sort of like, it's the capacity to pay. You're looking for $50 million, and we don't think the town can afford more than 22, right? It's not a binary.
Agreed.
Okay.
And I think on our end, we're that's a discussion we're willing to have, on the outside. We are happy to talk through that with the committee, because ultimately that's, that gives the imprimatur, the decision that's ultimately made, whether it is, where the town currently is, which is 5.31, or somewhere else, that the committee is satisfied that that ask is reasonable under the circumstances, commensurate with the need, and represents a number that exhausts all other options before going to the voters
That's 5.31 over 3 years.
over 3 years.
Right.
Yeah, that's in the report, Janet, that I sent. The
Yeah,
draft.
sorry, Jesse, I was rewriting, and didn't really have a chance to catch up with what you
No
had done.
problem. No problem. And it
but
includes the
that's
year one
just-
and the year and year 2, 3 for the override reserve fund.
That's just half, if we say the town and the schools are each half. And I don't know from what I've heard that the schools will be able to do that. Especially since the process you followed has always had it happening after. So if that's the case, I'm not sure this committee can say where the adjustments come from. We can say there's a gap and throw it back to the town, the schools, the select board, but we won't be able to say with any intelligence, this is how you adjust down to the number that we think is maximum.
We're not allowed to do that at all. All we're allowed to do is recommend a dollar amount,
Right.
period.
Okay. All right, let's keep, Jesse, did you have a comment on the outline? I'd love to keep going on the outline. A different comment?
I wanted to follow up on a comment Chaz made,
Okay, go ahead.
which I think relates to the work that your subcommittee and my subcommittee are doing. So Chaz mentioned that, and this is something that's been bothering me for a couple of weeks. In 2 weeks, the town's going to have their budget book ready. And in that budget book, there's going to be, if I heard Chaz correctly, I think he and I spoken about it before, a no override and an override. So it seems to me that, like, while we're waiting for data on the Expenditure and Revenues Committee, Chaz has, and the team, must have access to some information on the school side that we may or may not have yet, but they're certainly building it into the text for the budget book.
No,
If they're not, okay. So I'm just wondering where the small or drastic disconnect could be between the ERSC report in 2 weeks and the budget book in 2 weeks, in terms of what the town budget book is going to have in it with respect to a potential override recommendation, which will include the town. I mean, town meaning big town and schools together. So I'm not.
That's a good point of confusion to clarify, Jesse. We are not in a position to make a recommendation on a school side override at this juncture.
Thank you.
So the recommendation from the town's budget book is only for other municipal departments. It's not on the school side.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sergio?
Okay, that's important to know. Thank you.
Back to the outline and to this general discussion. Again, for Jesse's, just a clear reminder that our recommendations may differ from the town administrators. We may say that the town needs more money or they need less money. I have no idea. And so the very number that's on the table is part of what we should be looking at to determine whether or not we think it's a good number and not simply accept it.
Of course.
Okay, on the outline.
I mean, the number that we have in the town draft, Sergio, is the latest figures with the detail that we got from the town, and that's.
Right.
I mean, we're not making it up. I mean, if we agree or disagree with any of it, we can slide or adjust potential service cuts, potential pro-med cuts, potential FTE cuts, all that things.
Whatever. I'm
Yeah,
just
whatever.
saying,
Yeah.
town
It's not.
administrators,
Yeah, of course. Agreed.
they've taken their shot at it and given us what they think is good. Okay, back to the outline question. Under 1B3, the future section, there are 2 parts that I have question about. The first is that the school model appears there, and yet it's my understanding that in fact, that's going to come to this committee for a vote. And I would suggest that it need not be on the futures at all. But I wanted to get guidance from the school subcommittee as to whether there's some element of the school model which in fact should stay under futures because of a time feature.
Yeah, it's a good question. So from my perspective, because this is not something that would happen if it were to happen at all, within a 3-year timeline, I think that futures is the right place to put it. The recommendation that the school subcommittee had voted on, which is in the document that had been shared for today's meeting,
Yeah,
is that PSB do a study and evaluate this further, and look at buffer zones as well as other ways to do some classroom consolidation. So the recommendation really is just a follow-up study. The work that was done on this effort was done within the subcommittee only. The PSB admin team had limited resources. I think everybody knows that. And so we had limited data to use as an input into it. And therefore, the next step is to do a deeper dive on it. So I actually think it is appropriately placed within the futures.
so you're recommending that whatever vote that the full committee takes today on this initiative would actually appear under the futures section.
I'm comfortable putting it there, yes.
Yeah, I'm neutral.
Yeah.
I don't know if any others have any comments on that particular point. But I'm happy to listen to them and I'm happy to follow. The other question that I have is this question of the deficit projections. So we know the override runs out to roughly, if it takes place, to 29. And yet most of our planning work is done on a 5-year basis. So we know, for example, that on the town side, we do have long-range financial planning numbers that go out to 31. And so I don't quite know what to do with this question, but I personally feel that it would be very helpful to the work of the Futures Committee to get something from the PSB team, understanding that as you go out into the future, the numbers are harder to predict, but that's true for the town as well. And I think it would be useful to understand it because part of what I think Futures would like to do is to talk about what happens after this override cycle. We have some obligation, I think, to talk about that. So
Of course.
if there's agreement on that, I don't know how to get those PSB projections. I'm hopeful that from the help with perhaps of Jesse and Sadaf, Val, or any others who, or the town administrator may have some thoughts on this as well. But I would like to include it and get those numbers. Are we in agreement then on that? So
If
the-
I heard you, if I heard you right, Sergio, you were talking about whether or not the current override, what will happen in 3 years?
Basically, the question is exactly, what does this look like after the 29 fiscal year?
Right. So I think when I spoke to Janet about it, as well as the data Chaz gave me, it seemed to me that the amount of money we're looking for will just basically keep us floating until then, at which point the structural deficit would still be there and we'd be turning around to solve the problem again.
But I understand what I want are numbers. I heard the superintendent make a report to the school committee in December where she offered numbers that went out 5 years.
Oh, the not, yeah, there was a forecast, an updated forecast was given last Thursday night. That's available as well.
So I
And
think,
that-
I think Sergio, the forecast, the numbers that were done, I think it was in November, and it was just a bottom line number, and those were the ones that go out 5 years. And so I think the question is perhaps for the PSB team on whether that is all the information that is available for the out years, the last 2 years in that 5-year forecast, or whether there's additional line items similar to what was presented on December 18th and January 22nd that could be shared for this group to look at. So I know Superintendent Wong was on the call, and I'm not sure if she's still here.
I'm here and I have to drop off at 4 o'clock exactly for negotiations. So anyway, we put out a 3-year projection 5 years, in my experience, the fourth and fifth year, we kind of have to flatline those projections because it's one, we're in negotiations on all 6 contracts. That's not even resolved, so we don't even have that base to work with for years 4 and 5. A lot just changes between now and then. So whatever projection, we kind of have to make very conservative assumptions. So it's hard. They're just really conservative in the assumption, so it's hard to have an accurate year 4 or 5. So
If I may,
yeah.
Dr. Wong, when you say conservative, just explain, are you meaning that it will be
So
on the low
we
side
assume,
or on the high side?
well, so we just, I mean, so for utilities, we won't say, oh, it's 20%. It'll be some sort of conservative number for that. We'll
Conservative
flatline.
meaning higher? I need to know what your terminology is because I'm not understanding it.
You're right.
Or
Sometimes
put
they're
it,
higher, sometimes they're lower. So usually
Okay.
lower. So for example, federal grants, we usually level that number out.
Got
So
it.
if we level the number out for years 1, 2, 3,
Right.
that has a different impact. And if you take that same number that we
Okay.
know
I now
today,
understand what
yeah,
you meant, but
yeah.
I would
So it
respectfully
just
point out that this is no different than what happens on the town side.
right. So I think
Town
it
administrator would do the
distorts.
same. He
So
would be cautious.
it distorts what's reliable in years 4 and 5, especially. That's yeah.
Yeah,
Janet, yeah.
I think what Bill is saying, people always used to talk in terms of 5 years, and that's when the world was fairly consistent year to year to year. It changes dramatically. In 31, we're no longer funding the pensions at the level we are. That releases money to be discussed, which you're doing in your report.
Janet, you're exactly making my point. That is exactly why it's helpful to understand what those out years look like.
And what I'm saying is you're not going to know much. That what we can say is that as trends continue, it will be this, but we may or may not be anywhere near to sanity. In our report, what I wrote is the structural deficit is going to continue, but I defy anybody to put a number on it that makes a lot of sense. Even the numbers for 3 years out assume that what we see now is there. So I'm not sure I'd spend a lot of time trying to quantify it. We can talk about it, but I don't know that we can put numbers on it that are reliable. And I've always advised people don't put anything in writing you're not certain of, because that's what's going to be remembered. And I don't want to make a false projection. I can say, absent things changing dramatically, there's going to be a structural deficit and we're going to be right back where we were. I think we need to tell people that, given the level of services they're demanding that we provide, and the new ones get piled on and piled on and piled on every year.
I'm going to cede my time to Dick.
Yeah, thank you. In terms of priorities, this, I think, look at years 4 and 5 would be nice, but we're at this point on the school subcommittee hoping to get information. The schools are short-staffed. They're working on the budget over the next 2 weeks. And I think our priority really does have to be 27, 28, and 29. And maybe we can put this as a nice to have to-do item down the list, but I would not want them to be focusing on this issue right now. I think we've got higher priorities at this point.
Thank you.
All right, let's keep going with the outline. All right, so we got past section 1. All right.
Sadaf, can I ask a question?
Sure.
In the executive summary, why do we do you think that we should mention the CLA report some way? I know it's mentioned later on, but that could be a sort of hot button type issue.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think we need to, there's a next step or follow-up that that Chaz has coming out of our meeting on Monday around following up with CLA to see if they would have a capacity to do a follow-up to that. There is a section later on that addresses the CLA report follow-up. It's a placeholder because I think we're still trying to decide how to do that follow-up within the school subcommittee. And I don't know if Chaz or, I know Bella, you have to drop in 2 minutes. I don't know if the two of you have anything.
Well, what I'm thinking is that some of the issues in the CLA report have been addressed. And the voters need to know that.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
He just said, he just asked that we get some of the almost like a news update to people that some of the issues specified in the CLA report have already been addressed. So I guess, Bernard, my take on that is that if there's a specific item that relates to the override or some recommendation that we're making that might tend to conflict and or align with something CLA said, we should probably point it out in, somewhat direct, clear language. But I wasn't thinking that we were going to use this report as a way to provide a sort of an update on all the things we've done to address the audit.
Well, no, my concern is that, the CLA report is out there and I'm not sure, I don't know whether it's going to be an issue in people's minds, but if it is, I think we need to at least provide, some information that, we're not ignoring it and that we've addressed, some of the recommendations in that.
I would, maybe in the
A real
discussion.
focus, but just that if people are looking for that there's something they can find.
Yeah, Sadaf, you said it's later down in the document, right?
Well, we mention it later on in the document, but what's open is how we're going to manage it. I mean, it is something that we talked about in the subcommittee. I think the concern is that the school subcommittee isn't in a good position to be able to do the
There it is,
necessary digging, to say, the details of what has and has not been done as sort of an independent group. Right. There are a
Right.
number of questions around policy and other things that, we're just not equipped to do that. And so the question has been, how do we tackle it? And the recommendation from the subcommittee had been that we bring CLA back to see if they can do a follow-up to say, hey, these things are in flight, these are addressed, these are the things that are being worked on, and that would be the ideal situation. And the balancing act there is that, again, the PSB team is really understaffed, and so how do we do that while managing both that as a capacity constraint as well as figuring out what that would cost? And then there's time is the third issue. People, money, and time.
I'm not suggesting
Yeah.
that length, but just have
Yeah.
something in there that talks about the report.
I think what Bernard is saying is similar to what I was saying about the town school partnership. There are issues we talked about. They should somehow be referenced somewhere. And I don't think spending a lot of time now, which I didn't mean to do when I raised my issue, is where we want to go. But if part of this is to say what's not included that we should include, we should at least make note of the fact that maybe we need to talk about it. And I think what Bernard was saying is, does that have to be in the executive summary? Because that's as far as we've gotten in this document.
Yeah, I think we should talk about where it goes. And I think we'll have more clarity on what we can put in the report. Hopefully in the coming days. All right. Section 2. So this was really intended to be a background. It seems like not everybody had an opportunity to review this, which I understand was posted this morning. So apologies that this came late. But this is really common to all of the subcommittees. And I think the town subcommittee has actually written portions of this already, which is great. Any feedback on this section, section 2?
Melissa, could you continue to scroll it a little bit?
Yeah.
I think the enrollment projection one's not just over time, meaning not only projections, but historical too, so that it sort of looks like only forward, but we should probably, we're taking a look at it 3-4 years back, well, 10 years back through, projection for this year, for example, next year. And that gives that gives you a little bit more of a context.
Okay.
So rather than projection, it would also, I think, be history.
Who's responsible for this survey on community profiles?
Oh, you mean number 3?
Yeah, I'm not sure what this is under, because some of it is all of us started out with the town and that was.
This is under like the overall
Right.
ERC charge.
So
but-
that's my question. Who's writing that section? Because we didn't on the town. I don't know if you other guys did it.
No, it was done outside of it was sort of done outside of the volunteer group and the committee, right? So
So let me clarify because I put this in there. This was actually the not the survey that was done recently by Flash, whatever that was. That's not what this was referring to.
Okay.
The work that was done, I don't know, in the last 12 months or so, 12 to 18 months, that had been shared with this committee sometime over the summer that talked about, it was the community survey or something. Somebody else probably knows the title of this. I can't recall it. But it actually shared what the community in Brookline values and then how they rate the services, right? So in the top 5 priorities, I know there was green space, there was public safety, there were schools, and public safety was interesting because it was both something that was highly valued and highly rated, right? So that was something that was an interesting data point. So this was intended to be a summary of the data that we have, not the flash vote work
No,
that was done.
isn't that, Sadaf? It's who's writing this?
Oh, we have to figure that out. That's listed in the beginning.
Okay.
We have to figure out who's writing sections of this.
Writing
We do not
section. 'Cause
have owners for all of this yet. And I don't know that we want to do that in a big group right now.
And because some of that, I mean, when you get further down to retiree benefits, I've done sort of summaries on it. Shared that with Sergio because he said, hey, I'm doing this too. So what I found when I listened to the meeting that I missed last week is the cross-referencing that Sergio recommended, and I sent him something where I put that in. But if we don't know who's doing what, it's hard to know how to do the cross references. That's my point. But you can keep going. I'm just trying to raise things as I see them
Yep.
as we go through the document.
Yeah, so what I suggest in terms of assigning owners, I know that there's been a bunch of writing on the town side, and maybe only the town side. And what we will do as chairs between Sergio, Jesse, and myself is we'll sit down and assign owners to this, and we can get to the next level of detail. But
Okay.
I just want to make sure everybody believes these sections are valuable before we start assigning owners.
Okay, so there's the town school partnership is down there. That's fine.
Okay, great. All right, any other comments on section 2? Okay, great. So moving on to section 3. So then the way now this document is structured to go deeper on the work that the subcommittees did. So the first section is the town budget summary. So we'll add detail here. I think Jesse will go back and do this. Section 4, Roman numeral
I think
4.
we already put it it's in the report already, I think.
Yeah, it's in the report. So just to add the high level outline here, just so everyone's on the same page.
Yeah.
I want to make sure structurally it's similar to what we have in section 5, which is the PSB summary outline, which the school team did review and said that this made sense to them. I think that'll make it easier to consume. So anyways, 3 is a summary from the town finance team. Section 4 is the town subcommittee recommendation details supporting materials. And then section 5 is similar to the town section 3. This is a summary of the budget that PSB compiles, how they came up with it, the recommended budget scenario, what it includes, and then a gap scenario or the non-override scenario, and then details on the budget. Cost drivers, efficiencies are included, revenue sources as well. Any questions on those before I go into the school subcommittee recommendations? These were short, so I just ran through them quickly. And the town subcommittee has obviously written their report, so these should be easy to just put in there and make sure we have an analogous structure.
One of the things that I think straddles both, which we haven't talked about so far, would be FTE history. FTE as it relates to growth in the town from either operational or soft money.
Yeah.
FTE growth in the schools over time, which then allows us to, which has already allowed us, this is some work that John Van Scoyac started, I've been working with him on it, is to look at the relationship between staff to student on
Yeah.
the school side, and we already have the demographic information from Brookline, so we can look at town staff per resident as another one from the census data. And then you can fold costs into that as well. And there's some questions we're already asking there about, the FTE side of the house, which I think belongs in the report somewhere here, straddling the town and the school side.
Yep, that's fair. Okay.
Cliff had his hand up, I think.
Yeah, sorry, Cliff.
Yep, Jesse, I think that information is going to be really important. Over the years, the folks on the school committee have essentially said that certainly in recent years relative to some period before, that they really don't have data to be able to do apples to apples comparisons on FTEs. And so I'm curious to know whether or not you're just using like DESI data, or whether or not there's something that's been done to be able to make sure that things are apples to apples. And my second question relates to the census information, because the planning department has commented that they believe that the 2020 census data, because of COVID, may not be very accurate. And so I'm wondering whether or not you've spoken to Kara to get her feedback on that, because if it hasn't been incorporated, some of those questions, then you may be starting from a base that's not a good base to start from. And maybe there's something that needs to be caveated in the range and all that type of stuff. I don't know, but I know that I've heard that comment a couple of different times. So I would just offer that to you to see if you and John want to.
Yeah, I can reach out to her. I think the 2021 is different only primarily because it's a decennial census done by the government, which actually saw a big delta from 2019. When I originally looked at it, I questioned what was going on, but then was calmed down to realize that, every 10 years there's a real count done, and since then the numbers have stayed very very constant in terms of no big deltas. I can double check. I can double check with her anyway. It's not an issue.
Yeah, you're using ACS data otherwise, right?
Not familiar with ACS. I'm sorry.
American Community Survey. Where are you getting the numbers?
We can let's take that offline because we're in the outline.
Okay, that's fine. Yep.
Okay. All right. So let's go on to Roman numeral 6. So this is the school subcommittee recommendations. So this includes the topics that we dug into. A was benchmarking with comparable communities. So this was actually, Jesse, the goal in this one, and we have finalized this. The list that we would include was items like the one that you mentioned around teacher to student ratio, or other cost per student, things like that. We need to hone this a little bit. But
Okay.
where that would live, we can put it elsewhere too. But that was the intention. We organized this around cost avoidance, revenue opportunities, and kind of an other category. And we have names for our own subcommittee around who's writing what, just based on who has tackled the work. There's in E, there is work that is in flight, and therefore it doesn't sit in the other sections yet. But that's why it's sort of sitting in E for the time being, depending on where the recommendations land. Any questions on the school subcommittee recommendation section?
So you are covering the CLA report, Bernard, it's right there.
Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah, I knew that, but
Yeah,
the question is, should it be highlighted more?
well,
Right.
it depends on what the section says. Sometimes it's hard to write the summary before you've written the information because you don't know what to include.
Yeah, so Bernard, just to touch base on that for 30 seconds. I'm looking at the CLA report right now, and there are 11 items that were found, and many of them, I mean, I'm happy to report, many of them are like non-issues at this point. I'm happy to take the 11, put them in a table, send it to you with sort of current status, and then have you number one, see that we've made a tremendous amount of progress, both on the budget-related findings, the internal controls, the OSS issues. And I'm not aware of this issue with how far we've gotten on, CPNI training and something like cybersecurity training in terms of computer courses that, staff have to take. But in general, on the other 9, a significant portion of those have been addressed. Not sure how it's been, maybe we haven't disseminated it, at least from the school side, in terms of the super amount of progress that was made. Let's take a look at that first before we decide about how much of it we want to include in this report.
Okay, also Chaz has drafted a memo a few months ago outlining that also, so we have plenty of information, at least with respect to what we've accomplished.
I would say the general public is definitely not aware, and if one of the concerns is getting whatever we put out there passed, then maybe in that executive summary, it just says that, makes reference, there was a report and most of the issues or whatever you want to say about the issues have been resolved people will read the rest of the report, but that's the kind of highlight I think that Bernard was asking for.
That's right. There are a lot of people out there who know that a report was done and they, maybe have heard that it, said some bad things about the schools. We want to make sure that, we have some factual information.
The stuff that's bad stays in people's minds, and the school committee has not been effective in countering the last thing you read in Brookline.News. And, I mentioned this to you the other day. You need to start sharing with the rest of the town if you want the rest of the town to support whatever it is you need.
Agreed.
All right. Thank you for the feedback, everybody. So then section 7 is future subcommittee. So this is analogous. This is additional detail on the sections, on the components of the recommendation, with supporting materials and details on the future side. And then section 8 is that sort of other recommendations, details, to the extent that this is relevant here. I think this is something we'll take as a next step around how to land this or what can and cannot be done and on what timeline. Minority reports, conclusion if that's appropriate, and then a section on appendices to the extent that we need this outside of the supporting materials section. All right. There's more to that document, Melissa. I'm so sorry. Can you pull that? Do you mind pulling that back up? Thank you. So there's a page break and then there's a proposed timeline. There we go. Sorry, it's buried.
Trust that.
So what we did here was we proposed what we would do in each one of these full committee meetings, as well as some information in the subcommittee meetings. We'll add in the town side as well, so that we can make sure we can get from today to a report by the end of this month. Sorry, by the end of next month was the goal. And so this should tee up agendas for the meeting on the 4th, the 11th. I'm proposing a potential meeting here on the 18th of February. This is a little bit messier because it is February vacation for people who have kids in the schools. So there might be, vacations coinciding in here as well. And then on the 24th of February is I have a list here I have an item here to review a draft of the full report. So this is what it would take, I think, to get there by the end of the month. It is incredibly tight. but we can use this to plan for what needs to happen between now and the end of February. Other questions or comments on this?
Can you go to the end? Because where you last were when I wasn't here, just, no, get down to the full report. It's February 24th with the last one. I'm not sure how the full report gets put together overnight. I'm not sure what you're saying there. Are we reviewing the pieces or is there a full report? Because if the school subcommittee is reviewing and finalizing their report on the 23rd, and I thought we had said it's Bernard's responsibility to write the full report as the chair. I thought what we said last week.
Oh yeah, I heard that too.
Really?
You know,
I must have
those
missed
are
that.
issues that we need to decide, and given the hour, I would suggest maybe we take some of that up next week. Or in the groups that are meeting in between, or some sort of straw poll, I don't know.
So I don't expect, I did not think, and we can debate this. I was not expecting that we would review each one of the individual reports and then approve each subcommittee report. Instead, what I was thinking was we would skip that step, so to speak. And the benefit of having an outline for the full committee report is that the subcommittees can write their content, review that within their subcommittees, and then add it to the full report. And then we review the holistic, we review the full report. So that was the way that I was thinking about it, but you know, this is here for discussion. I think if we were to go through a round of reviewing each one of those subcommittee reports in the full committee, I'm not sure how we would do that within this timeline. I haven't been part of one of these studies before. I think it might have operated differently, but you know, we should discuss how we want to do it. Dick?
I mean, I wasn't here last week, so I'm just going off of, I listened to the recording yesterday, and that's where I thought you went.
Yeah.
The town report, I mean, I'm not sure where we are, Jesse, in terms of thinking about voting. Only 60% of us are able to vote. And I'm not sure we have a final draft. So I was just trying to clarify that. So what you're saying, Sadaf, is as we get our subsections written, we distribute them to everybody, and we're not taking individual votes, but we will have all seen enough to be able to vote, which means we have overnight to review the report that you're going to put out.
No, what I was saying was that we would vote on our own individual recommendations. Recommendations would come to this committee, which is there are 2 recommendations that are included from the schools group for this meeting. And then based on that, we would craft our report for the school section, for example, review that, iterate on it, and then bring the school section as outlined in the outline for review by this committee. That's what I was proposing.
Okay. So that's,
sorry, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Janet.
I was going to say, so that's not the end point of, from here, something is going to the select board. That's all I'm trying to clarify in my head.
Yeah, and can you clarify in my head, something going to the select board, it looks like you have it for February 23rd. And the next day is the full committee, but it's also the day that we have our select board meeting.
Okay.
So we need to get it a few days ahead of time so it can be reviewed. The public can review it, and we can have a public hearing on the 24th before we vote on by midnight on.
But you've got.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm
Yeah.
confused.
I mean, I guess I'm not sure if that's
Wait, I'm
honestly,
thinking of March, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm struggling to see how we do that, but people have been waiting. So Dick, I think, is at the edge of his seat wanting to make a comment, and then,
No, I'm at the edge of my seat, leaning forward to unmute myself.
okay, all right, great. Well, I'd love to hear from you, and then, just, I want to talk about the viability of this timeline as it's laid out. We didn't have the date for the select board meeting in here, so we should probably add that in there as a milestone and debate whether, it needs to happen on the 24th or it can happen at the subsequent meeting, and when a public hearing would happen, and just to be clear, that's actually why I wanted to have a discussion on the timeline, because these are the things that need to be sorted out. Thank you, Dick.
I was confused. The meeting that we need to hold in order to put a question on the ballot is March 31st.
I see. Okay.
Okay, so that gives us time to fill in past when we get the school committee report, those other steps that have to happen between, we've now seen all the subcommittees have all voted, we've seen all their reports, and we have this amount of time to put something together that goes to the select board.
If I could just pursue that point a little bit, there was some discussion about us having a little bit of breathing space. We had looked at the February 24th date. There was some discussion about whether that was a drop dead date for us. And I hate to say, look, hey, no problem, we've got more time. But as I recall, Chaz, you were going to think a little bit about the question of whether the select board really needed the final report on the 24th of February, or whether there was some breathing space after that, with the select board vote really a month away at the end of March.
And I think the conclusion that we kind of came to was the board doesn't act on anything on one night. And realistically, I think would love to have enough time to really digest this. I think so the last date the board probably could take. So if you follow the board's traditional schedule, the last date that the board could first take this up would be March 24th. Now, with that said, given the importance of the work, and frankly, I think the board is going to want to, hear from the committee, have the committee present and be, be available to have these discussions. You might want to consider targeting the board's meeting on the 17th of March. And so I think if you work backwards from there, to Bernard's point, the board tends to review things, over the weekend to be able to have time to review it. Your drop dead date, I would say, is the 13th. And if it really had to be the 20th, but I would target the 13th as kind of your final date. That's my take on this.
Thank you.
Sergio?
Pass his hand up.
I wanted to remind us that one of the ideas that had been floating around, and I think I was advocating for, was the possibility, if necessary, of pulling the votes and the recommendations and that for the executive summary to get that out the door, so to speak. And that some of the documentation, backup, narratives, thinking, things like that could follow. And I don't know that that materially changes the schedule, but it might give a little more breathing room in some places.
Are you suggesting, Sergio, that we would be holding votes based on executive summary? I mean, I don't see how I can vote on a school report until it's in my hands. And
That's correct.
an executive summary. I agree with you. It would be great if we could present an executive summary with everything to the select board and continue writing after that point, but we at least need to see enough to know how we're going to frame our whole recommendations.
So everybody who's working on pieces need to be thinking in those terms. And I offer this only if people think it's valuable or useful, not something obligatory.
Because I
So-
don't think we'll come up with a full recommendation until we have all the pieces and know the impact. I mean, the most critical thing for us to be able to recommend is the overall size, and we need to be able to see the pieces to know that, I think, or not. Not sure we need to continue talking about it now, but I think we need to be thinking about it.
I just want to say that given how precious the days are in doing this work, I'm going to be checking my calendar to see whether this is a leap year or not.
It isn't.
Darn it.
I know, sorry. I do apologize. I have to run to another meeting, but
Yeah,
Charlie is here and Nicole is here. And I obviously, if there's anything that you need from me or from team, I mean, Melissa is online. If there's anything you need from us or the team, please let us know. We'll follow up. Sorry.
Sure, thanks.
I, for one, am not sure I can do any more thinking at this point. I have been so immersed that my head is spinning, and it would take me time to really go through this piece by piece to see what I think. And we have a meeting first thing in the morning, so maybe we call it a day for now and figure out we're come prepared to say yes or no at our next meeting on the 4th.
Okay,
On what?
Yes,
Janet.
no, the outline and the timeline, because I don't think we're going to reach conclusion tonight.
I think that's fine. There are still pieces missing in both of those. I think we need input from Chaz and Bernard from you as well on the select board meeting and how you want to manage that component. So that needs to be layered into this. I think what we haven't progressed is actual conversations on the work that's been done by the subcommittees. And with our limited time, I am concerned about getting through that. What we had actually shared for this meeting a couple of days ago was 2 documents. So I want to at least tee them up. If people feel like they can't think through that at this point, we can decide that as a group. But there is a recommendation and a document related to the school model analysis that the subcommittee did, number 1. And number 2, there's a document and a recommendation related to facilities, recreational facilities rentals as well. The subcommittee voted on those recommendations, and we had expected to bring those to this broader committee for approval so that we can start writing a document around that. So to the extent that people didn't read that, we're not able to continue to progress the work on those.
We took a different approach. We drafted major parts of the document. We haven't voted on anything. They're available for you to look at. I sent some edits to what Jesse shared with you to the committee for us to talk about tomorrow. So I'm not sure we're there for a vote, but I thought that what we were going to be doing is sharing information as we get it so we can all digest on it, see what each other is doing, but not necessarily be discussing them as the pieces come out. I don't know how much time we have to get into depth other than to read and see if we have questions. I mean, look at how long we've been here, an hour and a half, just looking at an outline.
So I don't, for us, from a subcommittee standpoint, I would like to, I think it's okay if we have different approaches, right? The nature of the work that we're doing in the different subcommittees is different, and that's okay. For our subcommittee, we will share the documents with a recommendation, so then we can bring that together before everybody sees the final, the report, the subcommittee report in aggregate. But I do think it's important for us to put forward some of those components. Otherwise, I think bringing that together in aggregate at the end, without anybody having seen that, I think will be really complex given the work that
Yeah, no,
I'm
saying it's a great idea and we all have the time to read it, but I'm not sure that we have the time to discuss everything in depth, piece by piece, especially the stuff that you've done, which is extremely in depth.
So you're saying we don't have the time today or we don't have the time at all?
Well, I don't think we have the time. I haven't read the documents because I just have been writing and, you know, thought I looked, didn't see it, maybe didn't go back and look again. I'm not going to be able to give you anything because I haven't read it. And I also need to go. It's 4:30. I have a cold walk home and I have to stop for groceries along the way. So you can continue if that's going to be profitable for you, but I'm about to bail.
So we had three items that I think Sadaf wanted. One was approval of the outline and the other was possible votes on two sections of her report. Are we saying that none of that's going to happen today? That's what it sounds like, or at least that's what you seem to
All right,
be recommending, Jen. So if that's the case, I'm going to recommend that we need to add more meetings of the full committee to the calendar and to do that immediately.
Or to make the meetings we have longer, book them for longer blocks of time.
And maybe start them earlier in the day because starting at 3 makes it hard to keep going. It would help me tremendously to have things on the calendar. That's why I missed last week's. I'm going to have to cancel something else that's on my calendar for next week because this is a priority. But we started out by having a schedule of meetings and that fell by the wayside, which makes it harder for us to all get here or, you know, we're missing substantial people.
That's one of the reasons why Sadaf put that schedule that you saw today together with help from me and others.
Yes, but the meetings then have to be scheduled and
well, they're scheduled here.
are all.
We don't know if people can attend. That's a different problem.
Well, I mean, the town one tomorrow, Sergio, is not there.
Right.
And the one we'll have next week is not there. So it's not really all inclusive of what's going on.
Right.
So, you guys can continue and
I mean,
you
yeah.
on a recording, but I really need to go.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
So we do need another meeting. And when can we squeeze one of those in?
Well, isn't our next meeting next week
it is.
already?
Yes.
And my recommendation was we continue to meet weekly. I suggest we put them on the calendar for 2 hours realistically. And
Sure.
and then we just have to maybe facilitate, everybody needs to facilitate more aggressively. To just make sure that we get through the content. Otherwise, you know, there's a lot of work to be done between now and, you know, we can't have it both ways, right?
Yeah.
We can't get the report in, we can't pull in the date, and we can also not have the meetings.
So I'm here.
Yeah, obviously you don't need quorums for everything. Well, you need quorums, but you don't need everybody,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And you're just you may have to be taking votes without a full voting quorum. Quorum's not the right word, without all the voting
Not everybody.
members present.
Yep, fair enough.
Oh, we have a quorum.
Right, exactly. Sorry.
So we're going 4th, 11th, 18th, 25th for February is what I'm hearing.
Right.
4/11/25.
4/11/18/25.
And excuse me, Sadaf, it's Charlie in the room. You were saying for 2 hours, so would you suggest starting at 2 instead of 3 or running an hour longer?
I think that's up to the group and what they can make happen. You know, if we want to start earlier, that's fine. I can do that for now.
It would
you
just
know,
help to get some indication here, so we're not having to do it over email.
Yeah, I would prefer to start at 2 and go to 4.
Well, I just point out that, well, the meeting for the February 4th was never assigned a time officially, and neither was the one on the 11th.
Yeah, you're right. We did talk about it, but it's not on the calendar.
So we had picked a date, but not a time.
Okay, sounds like we're talking about 2 o'clock then.
That works for
Okay, do we need to go through the rest of the agenda?
Do we have a quorum in which that we can vote on the recommendations with? I'm actually not sure. Not everybody's a voting member, so I'm
What is our quorum number?
not sure.
5?
5.
Four, well, no, because not everyone's voting. Right, you get 9 minus 2, so it's 7, so 4-person quorum for
Yeah,
voting.
It's 4 voting members.
and we have 4.
Well, it's not 4 voting members for a quorum, is it?
No, but you have a quorum.
Okay, good.
You got 5 people, you've got 4 of them are voting members.
All right, if people have read the documents and are willing to stick around for the next 20 minutes and vote on the documents, I think that would be great. Otherwise, I guess we put this into the agenda for next week. And
So you're talking about your outline or the other 2 documents that you did?
I was actually moving on to the other 2 documents. I think we got a bunch of feedback on the outline. The town subcommittee also needs to add their content to the outline, which hasn't been done. We can look at it again next week if we need to. But I was suggesting that we look at the 2 documents that we shared, the
Why don't
school
you
model and the facilities rental. And again, to the extent that people have read it, if people haven't read those documents, then I'm not sure we can have a meaningful.
Why don't we just do a show of hands? Who's read them and would be prepared to vote? Well, that's only 3, so we can't.
Well,
Cliff, we can't see you.
Cliff is,
Are you-
I'm not a voting member.
Okay,
no.
Right, neither am I.
If John's here, I'm not a voting member.
what? John is not on the call. John died.
Yeah, I'm on the call.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he,
but are you prepared, John? Have you had a chance to read those 2 documents or one of them?
I have not, and I think it's premature to take the vote.
Okay, therefore, I think we have to
Okay.
adjourn.
Okay.
And we all have reading assignments and we're going to reconvene the full committee on the 4th.
And have we decided to start at 2:00?
Yes.
On the 4th, that would be preferred, apparently.
I agree. It should start earlier. We all get a little frazzled by this time of night.
Okay,
Okay, so with that, we'll end the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Sadaf.
thanks enough.
Yes, thank you, Sadaf. Incredible work.
Thanks, everyone.
Bring a whip next time.
I know, I can't do that virtually. I have to come to the room.
Yeah, well, you can send around an email telling people, make sure you've read it because we're voting on it first thing.
Yes, I will. I'll do that too. All right. Bye, everybody.